Welcome, and thank you everyone for taking the time out of your busy days to attend our 2021 CFO survey results. This is one of the most exciting CFO surveys we have ever seen from over 1,500 global CFOs representing all kinds of size companies from $200 million up to many billions of dollars, representing a ton of different industries and different countries throughout the world. This is one of the largest CFO surveys known to personkind, and Jim and I are very excited to be sharing the results with you today and having a bit of an open discussion about it. My name's Sebastian Grady, and I'm the president of $325 million Rimini Street. Rimini Street is a company that replaces maintenance support for companies like SAP and Oracle. And Jim is the CFO of Ingredion, $6 billion Ingredion. He's a client of Rimini Street, and we've been partners for a little while now. And Jim and I have incredible stories we're going to share with you. Welcome, Jim. Jim just announced incredible earnings for Ingredion this week. And Jim, I noticed that you had really amazing performance in South America and your South America operations. For me, and I think a lot of our listeners, could you tell us a bit more about that? It's exciting to see South America bounce back when they've been hit so hard by the pandemic.
Thanks, Seb, and very much glad to be here and be able to share with this audience of my peers about the survey. As you mentioned, we just closed our first quarter and announced 5% net sales growth and 20% operating income growth for the company. And one of the highlights was our South America performance. Within that business, we have been benefiting from gradual recoveries of the economies in Brazil and Colombia and the other countries in South America. But what's also been amazing is that as the pandemic hit South America, particularly Brazil, in the second quarter of last year, it just really had an impact on shutting down commerce and how consumer mobility, how people were moving around and conducting their daily lives. And we've seen that come back. And what's amazing is that even though there are some very saddening case rates in Brazil and some of the other countries, people are less fearful, they're a little bit more cautious, they're practicing social distancing, and they're actually moving through their lives and struggling with, well, vaccinations will happen, but I have to carry on. And so that's actually leading to both a volume recovery as well as some nice opportunities for us to be able to deliver better performance in that region.
That's fantastic, and it must be so exciting to work for a big global $6 billion organization that's helping people get better lives after such a unprecedented year that we've all been through. So after that great news, I'll have to tell you that I need to let you know there may be forward-looking statements subject to change over time, and that the content of this presentation and any documents associated are subject to intellectual property rights of Rimini Street. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about the agenda. Today, Jim and I are going to speak to you and speak with you about the survey overview, the results, what we think the top 4 key takeaways were of the survey. We will provide you a link to download the survey and then talk about very specific cost optimization strategies. With that, if there's one thing you take away from this meeting today, please download the survey and its results. It's chock full of incredible information, and you can use any of this information to support your internal business cases and see what your peers are doing globally. Jim, you were telling me yesterday that this type of information is gold for CFOs. Would you like to say a word about that?
Well, I think that CFOs love to have benchmarks and to be able to look at their own organization relative to what may be happening on average or just elsewhere outside of the organization. And so I think this survey and reflecting upon the insights that are in here from from all of you, right? You are the respondents to this survey. And so digest it and use it as you think about benchmarks and how your own organization is doing, where your organization is at. And it might be able to help you think about where there might be more important or less important areas to go change.
Awesome. Thank you for that commentary. And, this is just so great. We're so lucky to have a practice leader like Jim to talk about these results and specifically what he's done at Ingredion that is similar to a lot of the findings we're finding from the results. And with that, let's jump right into the survey. So this survey, as I said earlier, was conducted with over 1,500 CFOs and financial practice leaders, 1,572 to be specific. All these different countries are represented: United States, UK, Germany, France, Poland, Singapore, Malaysia, Korea. It's really amazing. And you can see in the chart on the right, the percentage of clients that are 200 million and above, 1 billion to 5 billion, 5 billion and above, like Jim from Ingredion. So there's a little something in this for everybody, and all these different industries in the middle pane are represented in the survey results. We couldn't be more excited about this. Dimensional Research is the company that conducted the survey. They did an amazing job. All of the data was gathered in Q4 of 2020 and Q1 of 2021. And the data was published in April of 2021. So it is hot off the press. This is really relevant, current data that you can leverage internally at your organizations. Okay, so the top 4 findings that the survey shows us is that CFOs, first and foremost, refuse to waste precious dollars that they have on IT investments that don't move the needle. CFOs, number 2, also see a very clear business value and ROI from leveraging existing investments. You don't always have to buy something new. There may be incredible potential in the products and services that you already own or have procured, and you're not getting the most out of them. I think the next one, being that this is a Gartner CFO conference, will not be a surprise. CFOs are very bullish about digital transformation and using digital and the cloud to further their business initiatives. And then finally, this should make a lot of sense as well, CFOs very much value the CIO partnership, and that partnership is tantamount and critical to an organization's success. Jim, could you spend a reasonable amount of time talking about all 4 of these as it relates to Ingredion and your specific experience?
I'd be happy to, Seb. I think as CFOs and finance folks, the first is that when we're operating within our companies, every dollar is precious, right? And you want to be choiceful about your capital. You want to be choiceful about your expense. And so, the first insight that IT investments that don't move the needle, while it may come out sounding slightly critical, but oftentimes we have to be the gatekeepers along with our CIO partners on expense and capital investments in IT systems that are actually going to be productive for our organization. So there's a fundamental logic to our decision making. I think that carries forward to the next survey insight, which is if we've already invested a lot of dollars, a lot of sweat, a lot of effort to get a system up and running, boy, we sure want to maximize that system in terms of how that data is captured, how those insights come out of that system, how we're using it either to find customers, help us in our manufacturing process, manage our people and talent, or manage our finances. And you'd be amazed at looking at some of just your big existing systems and actually persecuting what additional functionality is in there that we're not currently using in our organization today that we might be able to turn on that actually helps us with some business insights that helps us run our business better. I think the third survey, though, finding that we're highlighting here is probably the most important. So we've all lived through last year. We've all sent employees home. We ourselves might be working from home. We've all learned how to digitally upskill, and we're all connecting better through digital tools. But we're also now, you have to step back as a CFO and as a partner to your CEO and your leadership team, and you have to ask yourself, what's changed in how we do business, right? What's changed in how we do business? And, and one of the insights that I'll share from Ingredion is that as we look to our customers, we sell to businesses, and those businesses have procurement professionals who now have changed how they buy. They, through the power of the Internet of Things and through their customer portals and through their connections, they can reach many more suppliers very quickly. And so you have to be able to recognize that, boy, how our sales team sells and how our entire organization has to surround that procurement professional, has to surround that organization to deliver value for them. Digital, you have to be bullish on digital and the tools there that are going to allow you to develop greater customer intimacy. And I know as a CFO, that kind of can sound like, really, where's the revenue payback going to be from that? How quickly am I going to get a return? And it may not just be a business case, but there may also just be strategic value that you just have to somewhat trust in and believe in, that it's going to mature and show results in the future. And then finally, I think just how we get this done, you have to be able to team up with your CIO or your CTO, and you have to be able to have a working relationship, and recognizing that there's tension in that relationship, because sometimes they're asking for your capital, they're asking for your expense, you don't have it to give, and so you want to work through that. But most importantly, together in that partnership, you want to turn to the folks in the organization who are asking for that next system, who are asking for that next IT change, and say, hey, you're a user. Are your user requirements really clear? Do you know exactly what your objectives are as we're going to implement this system? And so that's what you have to work towards.
That's amazing, Jim. And you know what's interesting to me is you and most of the CFOs and CIOs that I talk to kind of put customer experience at a different level than almost everything else in your organization, because it seems like it is becoming the number one best way to differentiate yourself from your competitors. And I know when we were preparing for this presentation today, Ingredion produces starches and sugars and sweeteners. And I think you were telling me a story about just by changing the composition of some starch for a fast food manufacturer of apple turnovers, you could get a 12% increase in the number of turnovers they turn out in the assembly line every hour, something like that. Would you spend a few, maybe 30 seconds on that too?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we do is we think about, as a food ingredient, how does that ingredient work in the customer's manufacturing process? How does it satisfy the customer's consumer target, right? So we're obviously producing food ingredients. What's that texture? What's that taste? How does that appeal to the consumer? So, we look at that molecule, and as we take it through an entire cooking process, we're doing it now digitally in kitchens that are actually digital studios. So while our procurement person and our marketing customer and our innovation customer might be at home on their iPad, chef is in kitchen, cooking up and replicating what that customer's firm produces. And then we'll also send them samples. So in some ways, you really have to be flexible and agile in this environment to be able to say, hey, where's the value in what the customer wants to buy, how they convert those ingredients into food products or beverage products, what's the response from the consumers of that food and beverage product, and so that you're always delighting and surprising as you move through the customer's value chain. But digital now and being able to do things with Chef and digital studios is absolutely one of the ways that we're reinventing our business.
Yeah, and that's something that I think I would guess most people don't know about a company like Ingredion. Like, you know, when I listen to your earnings call, you have a lot of the analysts asking about how you hedged against the price of corn, which has gone up to $6 a bushel. But to me, the real IP in a company like Ingredion are all these specifics that get right to the customer experience. I mean, you're almost becoming a technology company, it seems to me. But anyway, that's really amazing experience. Thank you. Okay, so talking about customer experience, most of Rimini Street's business is replacing maintenance support on SAP and Oracle applications. But in the last couple years, we've also opened up a Salesforce.com practice. And it's funny, my conversations with CIOs, mostly CIOs, sometimes CFOs, about Oracle and SAP is more along the lines of, hey, this is mission critical, but it's my back office systems. Just make sure it doesn't break. When it comes to products like Salesforce.com, which is all about customer experience, it's how can we use this product to take our business to the next level? So one thing that Ingredion did with Rimini Street was they brought us SAP support. And on the chart here, you'll see a very specific example of how this works. Rimini Street's price is 50%, very simple business model, of what the price is that an organization would be paying SAP or Oracle. So if they were paying $2 million in this example, our price is $1 million a year. So that's an annual OpEx savings. This data comes from over 70 Rimini Street customers, and it was conducted by another company called Nucleus Research, where they asked Rimini Street customers, what type of savings do you get? So what you're seeing on this chart is the average savings. You may get a lot more, you may get less, your mileage may vary. But how these numbers came about are like this. If you're spending $2 million in annual maintenance, the rule of thumb is you'll spend about $4 million every 5 years to do a major SAP or Oracle upgrade. So if you divide that $4 million by 5 years, you get the second line in the picture that is $800,000 a year. And those are forced upgrade or migration costs that you don't really have to do. Because let's say the average customer is on a release or a version of Oracle or SAP that's 8 years old. The number one reason it seems that they do these upgrades is just to stay supported. And with a company like Rimini Street that guarantees support on any version of Oracle or SAP that you're running for 15 years, there's no reason to do these upgrades just to stay supported. You should only do upgrades if there's a clear business value or ROI that you're going to get out of that extremely expensive product or service. The next thing that is a massive savings is what's called customization support. A good 65, 70% of all the cases that we resolve at Rimini Street are based on custom code. That's another $600,000 in savings. Custom code, integrations, interfaces, performance tuning, how-to questions. None of those are provided for the most part by the vendors, Oracle and SAP, and that's where we come in and differentiate our service and provide another $600,000 in savings. The final savings is what we call self-support. Oftentimes when you get a fix from an Oracle or an SAP, it gets packaged with 200 other fixes. It's never been tested against your specific custom code and your specific data. So then you have to take those fixes and you have to regression test them and make them work against all your custom code and data. Rimini Street does that for you. So we dial into your test and development environment. We make sure the code fixes or the configuration changes that we make work against your custom code and your data. And that saves you probably 50% of the regression testing before you promote that to production. So a $4 million cost becomes a $1 million cost, annual OpEx savings. You multiply that by 5 years, and you get $15 million in savings. Other things that Rimini Street provides to many of our clients is we can help you in software license optimization. You know that's a big issue, especially with Oracle and SAP. We can help you get to the public cloud, like the hyperscalers like AWS, GCP, Google, Microsoft Azure. We can help you with leveraging the public cloud benefits from those companies. We provide application management services. We provide consulting. All of this adds up to one hand to shake when it comes to all of your SAP, Oracle, or Salesforce needs. And with that, if there are any questions that you have for Jim or myself, please feel free to email us. Our email addresses are on the screen here. We would be happy to answer any questions you may have or discuss anything and pass on some advice or get some advice from you. Thanks again for taking the time to listen.